Hi everyone, this is the first library video that you need to review for Political Science 391, your Information Literacy module. So let's get started. My name is Rachel Olson and I am the librarian for Political Science. You can get in touch with me using email. It's rachel.olson@uncg.edu. You can also use the link go.uncg.edu/Rachel to make a virtual appointment with me. If you need to meet in person rather than virtually, just shoot me an email and we can set something up. So a lot of what we're doing in this course has to do with information literacy. So information literacy is this process of thinking about what information you need, thinking about how to find it, use it, evaluate it, how to give credit. We're going to talk about the difference between academic and popular sources, many things like that. So there's a couple outcomes that we have here, and you don't need to particularly worry about these, but this is just something for you to know. So I'm going to talk to you throughout the semester about developing and using effective search terms for the information needs you have, revising your search strategies based on the results you get. We're going to talk about scholarly conversations in your discipline, what's being written, who's writing it, things like that. We're going to look at different formats, source formats that are related to political science and what you specifically need and the context of this course. We're going to analyze sources. We're going to think about credibility, audience, context, purpose, perspective, bias, all those things, among others. So I want to start by talking to you about research questions. So what makes a good research question? Well, a good research question should be something that you're interested in. This is something you're going to be spending some time with in your course. So you want to make sure that it's something that you at least care about a little bit. That'll make it more enjoyable. It should be in line with any instructions you've been given. Make sure that you talk to your professor about your research question. Make sure that it is appropriate for the assignments. You want to make it manageable, so not too broad, not too narrow. An example of a research question that is too broad would be, for instance, political systems in Africa. Like that would be way too broad. But you also don't want to be too narrow. You might not want to say political parties in the city of Nairobi. Something like that would probably be way too narrow. You want to be somewhere in the middle of those two. And I'll show you some examples that'll maybe explain that a little bit better. And you want it to be original as much as possible, but you can certainly cite other things if they are helpful to you. So there are a couple different kinds of questions that I would encourage you to consider. These aren't the only types of questions. This is just something I found that I kind of like for political science. So you have explanatory questions, which sort of, they're just looking at answering a specific question. So for instance, why did Obama win the presidency in 2008? Or why is Ghana a successful democracy, right? Like they have answers that you can explore and potentially find some answers to. Descriptive, so this again is more describing, like what is the nature of something? Tell me about the background of something. Policy questions and political theory questions. You can see examples of each one of these here. And if you're interested, you can use this link, which will take you to some more information about different types of research questions that you may want to ask. I find this particularly helpful, and you can see some good examples. And it talks about focusing your research question as well. So again, you're going to have access to these slides, so you can use this link if you would like to explore that a little bit more. So here are some examples of research questions that I think are a nice balance between narrow and broad. They're kind of right in the middle of those two. So what I usually recommend is when people have a research question they're considering, write it out as a question. Don't just say economic policies, economic downturns, right? Like be specific about what it is you're looking for. Okay, and then after you do that, go in and highlight or underline the most important words or phrases in that particular question. This is another example. What influence does China have over Nigeria in terms of oil issues? So of all these questions, I like that we put it in the form of a question because we're being specific about what we want, we're being clear, and then you go in and you circle or highlight the most important terms. Then we could plug those into a search. One more example, what has been the international community's response to piracy off the coast of Somalia? So take a second, think about what you think the most important words or sentences would be. I'll give you a couple seconds and then I will show you. Okay, so these are the ones that I would choose: international community, piracy, and Somalia. And you can see I've got a map of Africa here just to make the point that there are so many different countries, so many political systems in Africa. You'll be given the opportunity to explore different things in this course. So I would encourage you to definitely go outside of what it is that you are interested in exploring. Another thing is that if we're thinking about something like Somalia, for instance, you can find Somalia on the map here. You might also want to look at the impact. Let's say we had our piracy question. You might also want to include related countries, like things that are in the same region, something like that could potentially help boost your search. Okay, so now let's talk about forming keywords. So I'm using my piracy example again. After you've highlighted or underlined the most important words, you're then going to come up with a list of related terms that you can potentially ask. So for international community, I came up with global community, world leaders. There are others that you could come up with. This is not an all-inclusive list. Piracy, another word for that might be pirates. And then Somalia, I could say Somalian. I could also say African if I needed to be a little bit broader. Like I said, you could also include the names of some of the countries around that area. Okay. Basically what we're going to do with these is we're going to use different combinations when we're searching, different combinations of this list of words. And your list will probably grow as you're searching. You'll probably come across things that you're like, oh yeah, I'd like to include that in my search. So definitely be open to that. But keep a running list. It can help you once you start searching. So let's talk a little bit about finding and evaluating sources. So I strongly encourage you, whenever you find a source, whether it's a website, a book, an article, even if you found it through the library, you need to use this ABC framework to think about the quality of these sources. This isn't a checklist. This isn't a guarantee of source quality. If you're ever not sure whether or not something is high quality after you've asked yourself these questions, definitely talk to your instructor or talk to me. We're glad to help you. So when you think about this, think about ABC. So A stands for authority and accuracy. Who's the author of this source? What are their credentials? Does the source link to or reference other sources? That's really important. You'll see sometimes websites will link to what looks like other websites, but if you actually follow those links, it's kind of just taking you to the pages, pages on the same website. And that's sometimes okay, but you do want to be careful, make sure that you're not using something that only cites other pages on the same site, right? You want something that can kind of go outside of itself a little bit. Bias is the organization known for having a particular leaning or bias. Does the source consider multiple points of view? What is the purpose of the source? Those are all important things to ask. Bias isn't something that you have to be afraid of. Everybody has a bias. Every source has a bias. You just want to be careful when you're using it. You want to recognize what the biases might be and be careful to find things that are going to balance that out. Currency, when was the source created? How long has it been since it was last updated? People always want to know how far back they should be looking for sources. There's really no good rule for that because it depends on you, depends on the research you're doing. I might say for a lot of people, 10 years is a really good starting point. Looking at sources in the last 10 years. But again, every case is different, so feel free to ask your instructor or ask me if you have questions about that. So we are actually going to watch a video now on something called lateral reading that I think is really helpful. And lateral reading is basically evaluating a source by comparing it to other sources. So let's say that we pulled up a news article in one tab of our browser. We read through it. We're trying to decide if it's a good source. You should be asking yourself those ABC questions, but you should also be lateral reading. So you would then open up new tabs, actually leave the website that you're on, and see what you might be able to find.